Well, welcome back. In this particular lesson, we're going to take a look at what it takes to install Oracle Linux 7. All right. Now, when this material was produced in February of 2016, the current release of Oracle Linux 7 was 7.2, 7 Update 2. Today, it's 7 Update 3. And so while we will talk about the steps with 7 Update 2, you just need to be sure to download the 7 Update 3, and once again, you'll have no differences in the install. The lecture component here is about 40 minutes or less. The practice is right at 40 minutes. And while the package is installed and the initial configuration is complete, you might be able to walk away and go get coffee during the practice. Okay? All right. So, we're going to go answer the question, where do operating systems come from, Mommy? And in this case, it'll be e-delivery. We'll then talk about Anaconda, written for us by our good friends at Red Hat, which is your installer. There are some differences in Linux 7 versus Linux 6, so Anaconda's been updated. All right. We'll install Oracle Linux 7, and then we'll talk about the very, very narrow path on how to upgrade from Oracle Linux 6. So Oracle's delivery cloud is elearning.oracle.com/Linux. We have a place called Public Yum back in February of 2016. Today it's just called Yum. So yum.oracle.com. All right. And then as a customer with a customer service identifier, you can sign on to Oracle Support Services, oss.oracle.com, supply your credentials, and establish an account. Now, previously, errata was charged for. Definitely not within the spirit of GPL. And so today, errata is free. We would like you to subscribe so we can send you an email. But the nice thing about subscriptions at Oracle is we very narrowly define what you subscribe to. That way you don't get a bunch of other emails from other marketing folks inside the organization. Lastly, because of the file system that Red Hat chose, Linux 7 is only 64-bit. All right. The software delivery cloud, edelivery.oracle.com, and there will be separate download pages based upon the update that you're downloading. Once again, my guidance to you is that today you want to do a 7 Update 2 for this class. For your real live work environment, you want to do a 7 Update 3. Okay? And so, as you can see, we have a choice of some ISOs that are 4 and 3 gigabits. We have a source code in the 2 gigabit range. Remember, Linux is open source. You can get the source code. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily in a production environment you can compile that source and use it, but it does mean that if you were curious and you wanted to look at the source, it's always available. Red Hat, CentOS, Oracle, Ubuntu, Mint, and a whole plethora of other distributions. We have a bootable ISO And in fact, we use the ISO here in class to do the install. Now, Red Hat wrote. Red Hat is the author for the installer. The installer's name is Anaconda. And there's a piece of helper software, not necessarily in your book, but it's called kudzu. No. That's not the weed over in the southeast, but it is a piece of software that helps to do hardware discovery. All right? And so the hardware is discovered by kudzu and turns that over to Anaconda, so the Anaconda knows which drivers to get installed. Okay? It can run in a GUI, which is what you'll use to do the install, but it can also run in a text mode and in some of our other classes. Not in this one. We actually do a kickstart, which runs Anaconda in textual mode. Now, I've heard all sorts of stories about some new servers that they may not have a cup holder. And so the notion of a CD or a DVD that you can go put in the cup holder and run may not be useful, all right? I'd also guess that your servers are possibly in a lights out environment. And so a USB drive that you would carry in and plug in, that too may not be good. And so the notion of having a network file system ISO, or one that I can through HTTP do a wget, or an FTP that I can download after having done a PXE boot, those are all good choices. All right. And then once again, the other classes give us the ability to do an unattended installation. Pretend with me that today the server semi-trailer truck drove up and you have 10 new servers to install. And so instead of having to try to do that install with a GUI, I can set up 10 kickstart files, PXE boot the machines, and start 10 unattended installations. Now, the important part of this screen is right here in the center. And I'm going to escape and drop down into the notes pages. From the time you start the VM for host 01 in the lab, in the practice, you only have 60 seconds to get connected from Dome 0 to Dome U, host 01. Now, the red screen, if you notice there in the center, it's already counted from 60 seconds down to 44. All right? So you don't have a lot of time. Okay? If you get here and it's already down to 0, the answer is go up to that X right there, close that VNC window, go in, do an XM destroy, and then do another XM create. All right? This is the text mode, and if you take your 60 seconds, that's what you get. All right? And so if you want to stay in the GUI, you got to get there in a minute. Okay? Now, not a New York minute. We'll give you a full 60 seconds. Okay? As you get into the installer, the default language is English. And the reason for that is up here on the top of the screen. You notice that we already have chosen the US keyboard. Now, that is based upon the machine in the Oracle classroom that you're going to be connected to remotely. Story, briefly. I had some folks from Quebec City, Quebec, who really wanted to use US International. And I had to explain to these folks, whose French was probably better than even my English, that no, you can't use the international keyboard because that's not what's connected to the machine in Boulder, no, Broomfield, Colorado. All right. And so we have the US keyboard because that's the hardware. You remember kudzu? That's the hardware that's plugged into Dome 0. That's your boot environment. So as we progress, after having chose the language, here on the installation summary, you'll notice that we're going to do a date and time. We're going to reconfirm language. You don't need to do keyboard because that's already chosen. We'll look at security policies, installation source, software selection. And notice on the screen now it says minimal install. No, you will not do a minimal install. And then we'll also have an installation destination, and you'll have a 12 gig system.image file that you'll use. And then lastly, after we have done the reboot, we'll go in and we'll disable kdump. Time zones. The time zone on the machine is built for the area over here in the United States that would be defined as the Mountain Time Zone. All right. You can use whatever time zone you want. However, know and understand that sometimes the times within the classrooms there in Broomfield may not accurately reflect the time zone that they're in. And so just pay close attention, and then as we get out to subsequent practices, we'll actually let you go in and change the time and the time zones. In the changing of the time and the time zones, you're going to configure one of the machines to be a NTP client, and you're going to configure another one of the machines to be an NTP host. All right. So no, we won't go out and use the rel pool ntp.org, but we'll make Dome 0 your host, and then we'll make one of the Dome U's a client until you'll actually get set up for the network time protocol. And there's a very real possibility that your organization already has some sort of contractual commitment with some sort of time service. Now, for the Oracle employees in the Western Hemisphere, our time server is located in Orlando, Florida. All right. And so whether you're in North or South America, Central America, you coordinate your time through Orlando. Keyboard layout, and once again, this is determined by the keyboard that's plugged into the back of the machine. In this case, it is just a very standard US keyboard. All right. Much to the chagrin of my students who were in Quebec City. Language support, English. Now, guidance that I give people is, insofar as language choice is concerned, it really depends upon what keyboard you're using. Another story. I had a group when I was teaching at Hewlett-Packard that were up from Acapulco, Mexico. And they wanted to install Spanish. And so the question was, do you have an international keyboard so you can get the Spanish symbols? Well, yeah. Well, there were like 3 or 4 of these guys. And one said, well, I want to install Hebrew. And I said, okay, Do you have a Hebrew keyboard? Because if you don't have a Hebrew keyboard, you can't form the Hebrew characters. So the driving piece here is not the language that you want, it's the hardware that is attached to the machine. Security policy. We don't get a lot into this, all right? But I'd like to escape this page and take a look at the notes page below it. And the reason for that is there are some URLs down here in the notes pages that are important. All right? So, Security Content Automation Protocol, SCAP, S-C-A-P. And so www.open-scpa.org, security policies, choosing a policy. This lecture is only supposed to take 40 minutes. I can't cover that material in 40 minutes. That's just not happening. But that would give you a place to go look if you're looking for something other than the default, which is what's chosen up here. All right. The second URL that is here is nothing other than the Oracle documentation. And so docs.oracle.com/CD, and then the material number for Oracle Linux 7's documentation is E52668_01. Okay. And so there's a repeat of the number, and then a repeat of the number in the PDF. The next screen that comes up is the software installation source. And you'll notice that up here, we have auto-detected installation. And so /dev/SR0 is the default location for mounting an ISO. All right. Now, once again, you can see from the screen that the ISO here is 7.2. You're going to want to use 7.3. Okay. We'll talk about additional repositories to add. One of them could be MySQL. All right, if you're wanting to use that. And then there's also a file here, run install repro add-ins. High SQL or high availability. So you can get the ability to go in and change sources, all right, and identify different locations from which to pull software from. Now, as I showed you on the previous sets of slides, what is originally chosen is the minimal install. What you're going to choose during the practice is a server with GUI, and then you'll select some additional add-ons to be included in that installation. Oh, and there'll be like 1,250 packages that you install, somewhere around that number. That's not a precise number. Okay. But you'll have and make different choices. And so I believe the next screen even shows me that you've chosen the GUI. And so you've got a choice of picking the MariaDB or the MySQL DB. We already have the Berkeley DB for the RPM database, and then the SQLite DB for the Yum database. Okay, and so those are simply to go in and click what things you want to add as an additional install. All right? Really very easy to do. Your screen, when you do the practice, is going to look different than this. You're not going to have 3 10-gig utility disks. So these here are not going to be on your screen. There will be that one 12 gig, okay? So that is the only one that you will have, okay? And what we want to do is we want to go in and choose, I will configure my own partitioning, okay? And so minimum requirement from Linux 7 is that you, one, have a boot location and that you have then a root location. That's it. However, Oracle adds a third, which is a pretty good choice. And it's not /boot, it's not /, but it's /home. And the reason that we do that, under /home, you'll have /home/ some username. And so if I have to go back and reinstall the software, I don't want my users to lose all their files. No, that would not be good. All right. Now, there is a change. As we get off to 7 update 3, we want to have 1 gig of boot space. Now, 7 update 1, 7 update 2, 500 meg. All right. But as you get out to 7 update 3, we want to change that. All right. And so if you were reading the install notes, then it would tell you 1 gig. When you come to this screen, you're going to change the LVM and you're going to use the plus symbol down here at the bottom to add additional partitioning as you do manual partitioning. And once you get through with that, this gives you a summary right before it goes in and destroys whatever was there before. Okay? Now, if you've done a 6 install, you remember you had to go in and delete those other partitions before you come back and create the new ones. It's now handled all at one time. And do notice, there's that home that I talked to you about. All right? And so while it's not the minimal requirements of root and boot, it is still something Oracle thinks particularly about. All right? Now, along those lines, once again, another story. I had a student in class who asked me about /var. And he really wanted to put that into a separate partition. And I said, well, why /var? And that's because /var log was filling up with log files. And so if it's under root, under /, then all of a sudden your root file system is OUT out of space. And I said, well, yeah, sure. You're going to do swap here, all right? And so when you do the swap, follow the same thing and set yourself aside a var. And he says, is it going to be that easy? And I said, try it. You're going to do it in the practice. All right, set yourself aside. You don't need a lot here in the class, but you're going to need more back at home. And so it depends on how much space you have available. But certainly try it, and then give me some feedback after we get through with the practice. Sure enough, he came back to me and said, wow, you mean we've been doing all this struggling? I said, see, we've already paid for you coming to class. This is a good thing. All right, we need network. You're only going to configure 1 NIC here, host 0. We have a set of IP ranges. Remember, I have Dome 1, Dome 2, Dome 3, Dome 4, host 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4. And so a 192.0.2.101, 102, 103, and 104 are the numbers correspondingly. Now, we set up with the special address class of a loopback address, so 127.0.0.1. All right, and that's pretty common. Now, while I'm talking about it, Oracle, as are a lot of companies, still very much an IPv4 company. All right. Yes, I'm fully aware that IPv6 has been available since 1996. This material was produced in 2016. 20 years. Okay. And so what the good friends at Cisco and Brocade tell us, at your point of presence to the web, we'll do a NAT. So we'll do a network address translation, and we'll take your IPv4 address, we'll NAT it to an IPv6. Now, the World Wide Web's been v6, oh my gosh, 2014? Yeah, 2014 or 2013, a while. So we're going to configure, in this case, 192.0.2.103, host 03. The net mask of 24 is what is called classless inter-domain routing. All right. You and I know a net mask of 255.255.255.0. Well, in that number, there are 24 bits, 3 octets of that address. And so that's what the 24 is all about. The gateway here at 192.0.2.1, this is DOM 0. And then inside of Oracle's corporate, we have the 152 number and the 10 number as part of our DNS servers. And once again, this class will have access to the entire World Wide Web. And so we need to go in and get DNS configured. Now, you'll get into this install, and it will come in. It says creating disk label down here at the bottom. It'll then come in and install 1,250 packages. It'll then do post install. All right. And so this install itself may take 25 or 30 minutes. That's not part of the 40-minute lab. It's just not. All right. But while that's happening, we need to configure root's password. 6 letters, all lowercase. The word is Oracle. And we need to create an Oracle student. Username Oracle, password Oracle as well. So here's the root stuff. Now it's going to tell you it's a weak password. The answer is it's okay. It's a VM. All right? So if they can't get to DOM 0, they can't get to the VM. All right? So that's all right. And we do it here just so that they're cookie cutter, that they're all the same. And that seems to work for us. Oracle. Its full name is Oracle Student. Once again, the password is Oracle. That keeps it easy, keeps it simple. Before we leave this screen, sometimes the directions will tell you to click Done. Done is all the way at the top in the left-hand corner. There are other times it's not in the upper left-hand corner, it's in the lower right-hand corner. And depending upon the size of the screen that you have, neither one of those two corners may be visible. And so you're going to need to either bring up, bring over, go the other way, bring down, to make sure that they get to the place where they need to get. Now, you're connected through Tiger VNC. And so when you reboot this box, this connection's going to go away. Okay? And so when you reconnect again, you've gone back to Dome 0 and you've restarted a new Tiger VNC. We need to accept the end user license. Once again, there's no money involved here. All right, this is Linux. It's open source. Oracle can't charge for it. Red Hat can't charge for it. CentOS, which is now back with Red Hat, can't charge for it. Mint can't charge for it. And so we do still have some export requirements that you must live with. Period, end of sentence. And so once the license has been accepted, then once again, the lower left-hand corner will become highlighted, bolded, all right? You'll click Finish, and then you'll get a sign-on screen for Oracle Student, all right? So you got to follow all these steps along to get a GUI logon window. All right, upgrading from 6 to 7. First of all, 6 has to be installed as a minimal install. All right? So if I've done a GUI install like we do in this practice, you can't install from that. Secondly, upgrading from UEK2 is not supported. You've got to be running UEK3. Thirdly, no Oracle product stack is available. None. And so you got a production machine. You're currently running an 11G R2 database, R12C, R1 or R2 database. That box is not upgradable. All right? And so it's a warning. It's got to be a very minimal install, okay? And it takes longer to do the upgrade than it does to do the fresh install. Okay, you good with that? All right, so we've looked at the GUI and the steps on how to install. We've talked about Anaconda as we snake down through the install. There's a joke there, probably not much of one. We install Oracle Linux 7, and then we briefly talked about upgrading from 6, which was not all that good. Now, a lot of lessons have quizzes at the end. From which of the following can Oracle Linux DVD images, ISOs, be obtained? Oracle's cloud delivery, Linux Yum, open source projects, or the Linux portal. Give you just a moment to think about it. Did you get the answer A? Which is the e-delivery cloud? All right, let's go do an install. And so once again, we said it'd take about 40 minutes, and the answer is to work you down through the slides, but there'll be places where you can get up and go get coffee. See you back here shortly. All right, this is the practices for lesson 2, installing Oracle Linux. We're going to install Linux 7.2 on host 01 virtual machine. Now, when this course was created in 2016, 7.2 was the latest. I would tell you today that if you were going to be just starting this process, you'd want to go ahead and install 7.3, 7 Update 3. We'll then log in and we'll shut down operations on host 03. And if I'm on host 02, I'm in that OVS running pool host 02. Literally, I can go up a level to host 01. There's a system image file, which we will go through and format during the install. And there's the vm.config that will be used to create this virtual machine. And the XM list shows us that host 01 is not yet running. All right. So, got to be logged on as root in Dome 0, have a terminal window open, and then CD to the OVS running pool host 1. Gee, I think I just did that. Now, I'm going to cover what we're doing here because it is honestly very time critical. We do an XM create vm.config. You'll come back and do a list-l host 01 pipe grep location to get a port number. And then when we launch VNC Viewer, you'll connect localhost at 5902, which is the number that will be generated here. And then that's this early in the class, that's usually what we get. However, next page. This is the screen that's going to come up. And what I want you to know is that this screen is only up for 60 seconds from the time you issue that XM create host 01 command. So you can't really dilly-dally, all right? You just don't have the time to do that. And so when you start it, hurry. And I'm going to give you some new syntax too. All right. So let's back up. And I'm right there. Let's go here. In XM help, I'm not happy with that output. Pipe grep VNC. VNC viewer you can attach to one of the VNC servers. All right. And so we're going to do a XM create host 01 and then an XM VNC VIEWER host 01 ampersand. And there it is. And look, I've got 49 seconds. So I'm going to click on the background here, move the up and down arrow. All right. And you notice that because I clicked on that window, it stopped its countdown. And so as a command, and let's bring that up again. So instead of going through the multiple steps of doing XM list, we do have this VNC viewer capability. And when I give it host 01, because XM stands for Zen Management, it knows which machine I want. All right. And so I don't have to have that specific port number, but you can follow what's in your activities guide, and that too will work. Just remember from the time you say create, you've got 1 minute, 60 seconds. Okay? Let's go back over here. Let's go back down to my PDF. And so that screen kind of looks like the screen that I've got up there. And once again, let me reinforce that you've only got 60 seconds. So use the up and down arrow to highlight install Oracle Linux 7.2. Well, watch, I'm going to push the down arrow. It says test the media. No, don't test the media. Don't troubleshoot now, we'll do troubleshooting later. So I want to say install, and I'll press return. And then we'll get a window showing us that it's going through the boot process. And once again, there's a lot of booting. Not just a little bit of booting, but there's a lot of booting. Starting the installer. Now, because we have connected with VNC Viewer, then we're going to get a GUI version of the installer. And so what's highlighted here is English, and we've chosen US English. There are a lot of other English options available. However, the machine that you'll be connected to doing your lab only has a US keyboard. I had some folks in a previous class who were from Quebec City, Quebec, in Canada, and they really wanted to use English International because they had international keyboards. All right, and the discussion was, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that because the keyboard on the machine where you're doing the install, this case in Colorado, doesn't allow for that. Now, as you look at the screen, honestly, there's something down here on the bottom chopped off. And so I'm going to bring this slider bar down. Oh, look at that. Even though English is selected, you've got to say continue. And so it's going to US keyboard. And so as you read the notes back over here, and there's that screen. We picked English, we said continue. And then we're going to look at localization, software, or system in any order. And so the localization stuff is date, time, and language support, and keyboard, which is already chosen. A security policy, installation source, installation destination, and we'll do automatic partitioning for that. And so we're going to begin by selecting the localization menu options. The very first one we're going to select is date time. Now, already selected, because we've used a US keyboard, is Eastern time. All right. But you could choose Central, Mountain, Pacific. All right. All of those are fine. Once again, the folks that I taught in Quebec were all part of the Eastern time zone, so that worked. But I have had folks in France. All right. I even had folks in Romania. All right. And so your time zone is your time zone. I'm going to leave it here as Americas, Now it says Toronto. Oh, let's do that. I'm up here. Okay. But once again, certainly Toronto is in the Eastern time zone. That's where the peg is here. All right. Now, this is being recorded, obviously, on February 17th, 2017. Okay. So we've chosen date and time. We selected the time zone. Scroll up if necessary and click Done. All right. And so in this case, the Done moves from the Continue corner here to the upper right-hand corner. And so let's scroll up. And we've chosen a time zone. We're done. Click Done. The installation summary window appears. Select the keyboard menu option. No changes in this window. All right, because it's already US keyboard. We now want to go select the security policy menu just to see what it looks like, but there are no changes in this window. We're not going to set necessarily a security policy. And so here's the security policy. And this is what the defaults are. All right. And so we're not going to make any additional changes with this. We're just going to select Done. Installation source, once again, no changes in this window. And we have local media. Obviously, we've already booted with it. All right. And so obviously there's an ISO file out there that we've made available. And once again, I'll take Done. And so installation summary, we now want to click Done. And we want to now configure the software selection. So that's this guy here. And so what we're going to do, we have the ability for a minimal install, infrastructure server, file and print server, web server, virtualization host, like what we're running on here, and then a server with a GUI. All right. And so there's minimal checked here. And so what we want to do is we want to select server with a GUI. All right, that's one of the options. And watch your screen here on the right, because it changes. All right, as we go in and have checked a different base environment. From this list on the right, FTP server, file and storage server, and network file system client. So there's a checkbox for my FTP server. There's a file and storage server, another checkbox. And then network file system client. Now this is all arranged alphabetically. So I'm going to scroll down. And then there's a slider bar here inside this window. And so this network file system client. And that seems to be 1, 2, 3. Good. We'll scroll back up and click Done. Now that's the outer scroll bar here. Next, I think it's installation destination. Installation destination. All right. There's a 12 gig system.image file that was in that U01 directory. And so, because I used an ampersand, it put the VNC viewer in the background. And so an ls-l shows that I've got this 12 gig system.image file, but it's the one that you're going to target to do your installation on. Okay. So this is going to be the XVDA device. There's 12 gig free. Because this is the only disk, it's already been selected. Okay. So under Storage Options Partitioning, select I will configure partitioning. So that's this radio group right here. Now when I bring it up, it says automatically configure. I'm going to choose I will configure. We want to click Done. No, Al. That's why the PDF is down here. Click Done. The first mount point that we're going to create is a boot mount point. We're going to use the Linux 7 standard file system. This is the SGI XFS. And we're going to make this boot partition 500 meg. It's going to be called XVD1. So I want to do a standard partition. So I click Standard Partition. Then the plus sign here. That's this plus here. All right. And we're going to add a new mount point, which will be the /boot and the 500 meg. So I'm going to click the plus. Mount point will be /boot. Oh, if I could only type. And then I'm going to make that 500 meg, I think. In caps, MB. And so to complete that, you're going to add that mount point. All right, so we've got one mount point boot. Ended up being 476 megabytes. All right. And so we're now ready. It confirms it. It's all there. It's in good shape. With boot selected, click the file system arrow to view the appropriate file system types shown. All right, so we have file system right here. Notice that the default XFS is chosen, but you've got ext2, 3, and 4, VFAT, certainly in the extend family. I would probably pick ext4. All right, but XFS is just as good. Okay. All right, we now need to manually create another mount point. This is going to be the root partition. XFS 6 gig, and it's going to be XVDA2. So plus, now from the pull down, and so once again, we have a mount point. It came out to be 572, 551, 5772, or 22. Standard partition, once again, we'll use XFS. And we should have one more mount point here. Okay, we're going to add another mount point. This time, it's going to be a home mount point. During the lecture, I talked about the fact that the two required partitions are boot and /root. However, Oracle recommends that you also create a home partition. That way, if you had to go back in and reinstall at some point in time in the future, then you could do that without destroying whatever may be on the home partition. All right. So we're going to make it 2 gig. So mount point name is home. $2 GB. Add. And once again, we'll use XFS. All right, so we need to manually create a swap partition here with the remaining available space. It'll be XVDA5. All right. And so once again, plus swap. Now, just briefly, you notice that there is a /var here, and that's because /var/log is where the majority of your log files are. And there's also a /opt/op. And so some folks find that var log messages fills up. And so they don't want it in their root file system. They want it in a separate partition. That's not an Oracle requirement, but it's a thought. Could be a best practices kind of category. All right. And so our guidance here is to make it 5 gig. So there's swap, all right. It's not going to be XFS, it's going to be swap, okay. And even though I asked for 5 gig, it got adjusted down to be only what was left, all right. So at this point in time, we've created 4 new partitions, a boot, a root, a home, and a swap. And so I believe it tells us we're done at this point. Click Add, swap's there. All right, we scroll up and say Done. Then going to go through and create our environment for us. And so the bottom of the window that I just had up said Accept Changes. Accept Changes. All right. And so looking at this window, I'm going to scroll down. And you notice the thing that is down here on the bottom is network hostname. It's not really clear though. And so we'll select the next word, host name. And so we have ETH0. And we want to start by giving this host a name. So this is host01.example.com. Now, folks, this is important. All right. You'd be surprised how many different ways I've found host01 to be typed and spelled. But it's critical that it should be correct. All right. We then want to select the off toggle switch up here and move it to on. There we go. And it changes color. No, Al. And so over on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a configure button. And so we'll click configure. And it comes up with the name of ETH0, and we'll use that. There's a cloned MAC address. Remember, this is a VM. This is a virtual machine. And so this is under the Ethernet tab. And so they want us to pick the General tab, which is the first tab, and automatically connect this network when it's available. And so we're going to go back and click General. We want to check the checkbox, automatically connect. Okay. We want to click the IPv4 settings. Now, once again, I talked about this during lecture. Oracle and a lot of other major companies are still very much IPv4 oriented. Okay. And that's not all bad, but we know that IPv6 has been available in Linux for 20 years. All right, it was available in 1996. Oh, I guess that's 21 years now. Okay. And so it's been available for a while. So now that we're here, we have DHCP as our automatic. Instead, we want to select manual. And then we'll fill in IP addresses. We'll use the CIDR classless interdomain routing, net mask, and then the gateway, which 192.0.2.1. If you recall from the last practice, that's the IP address in our public local network of Dome 0. All right, and then we have some DNS servers. There are 3 of them, the 192, the 152, and the 10. So we're going to pick manual. We want to add an IP address, and 192.0.2.101 needs another period, doesn't it? Tab 24.255.255.255.0. And we want to go with 192.0.2.1, all right, as our default gateway. And then for our DNS servers, 192.0.2.1, comma, 152.0.2.1. 168.154.3 and then 10.216.106.3. So 192.021, 152, oh, it's 154. 168. Ah, you had it right. 152. 168, 154, 168, 154, 3. And that's a comma, and then 10.216, 106.3. For the search domains, I believe that's us.oracle.com. Yep, us.oracle.com, comma, and example.com. Okay. You know, if I could type, it'd be great. So us.oracle.com, comma, example.com. And at this point in time, I think we're all done. I think we can do save. Al. Oh, click the save button. All right, that's good. I can do that. And notice it's on. It had gone off, it had gone back on, but that at least gives me my information. So 192.0.2.101. Host 02 is 102. We put in CIDR 24, and we got 255.255.0. The default route is to Dome 0. That's also our primary DNS. And then we have a couple of the Oracle corporate DNSs. And so scroll up and then click Done on the installation summary. And so there we go, done. And so on our installation summary, once again, it's at a different point. I don't know why it's in different locations on the screen. I can't answer that. All right. And so all right, we want to disable kdump. Kdump currently is enabled. So I'll click on kdump, and I'm going to remove the check mark so that once again it's empty. And we'll scroll back up. We'll say done. And you notice that the message now tells me disabled. And so in the lower right-hand corner, we have the begin installation. Well, I got part of it. There it is. And it's going to move along here and get a bunch of packages installed. It's going to go out and create some partitions. And so while that's running, we want to go ahead and click on root's password. 6 letters, all lowercase, ORACLE. All right, now it tells me that it's a weak password, and yes, I understand that. But that's going to be the password for all of the Dome U's. Did it not pick that up? There we go. Notice that we've got 16 of 1,247 packages done. We are going to create a user here. Oracle student. full name is just Oracle. Password, once again, will be Oracle, lowercase. Oracle. And so user creation, not done yet. So, oh, that's root's password, we did that. Create a user, full name is Oracle student. The password is Oracle. And the username is also Oracle. And when we're done, we'll click done. All right. Now we're still waiting for about 900 packages to be installed. And so at this point in time, I'm going to pause the recording and we'll start back as soon as all of the packages are installed. I've come back just a little early. Now, the 1247 packages is because we chose server with a GUI. And if you watched them, there were a lot of things for GNOME, all right. It's now finished the install. Time was, 10 or 12 minutes. It's finishing the post installation setup task. And I think when it gets all the way complete, we're going to say reboot. And so let me reposition my screen back here. Now it's all the way down and all the way over. You don't see anything yet. That's because it's still doing post-installation setup task. And so once again, I may pause you for just a moment and I'll come back. All right, it took about another 12 minutes to complete. So the time totally to do the install for the 1247 packages and then to do the post-install cleanup took about 25-30 minutes. All right. Once again, I didn't record all that time because I didn't want to have a bunch of dead air. Now, I'm about to click reboot. All right. And so it says, click reboot. And when you do, the window's going to collapse because the environment is going to reboot. It's going to put us back on DOM 0. And so we need to reconnect. But once again, instead of using the VNC viewer ampersand, I'll use the Xen management VNC viewer. It's a reboot. The window here will go away in just a moment. There we go. You notice we're now back on DOM 0. We do have host 01 now that's running. It's not all the way up yet. It's doing the boot process. All right. And so there's my VNC viewer host 01 once again in the background. So I still have a prompt available to me. And you'll see some messages going through here as it's doing its boot process. And there are the lines going across the bottom of the screen. There we are. And so it tells us the license hasn't been accepted yet. And we have a network host name, and it looks like the network is up because there's arrows going in both directions. And surprisingly, that looks exactly like this screen. So they want us to click the licensing information. Now, Linux is no charge, but you do have to accept the end user license. All right. Just say I accept and done. Scroll down if necessary and click Finish Configuration. So let's click the license information. I accept. Done. Finish configuration. We'll get all the boot process done. And if you set up the user correctly, we're going to have a sign-on screen here for an Oracle student. And so you'll click right on top of the name. Oracle student password is 6 letters, lowercase, O-R-A-C-L-E. There we go, screen, there we are. How about that? You're now actually signed on, okay? And so English is selected. So we'll take English. I clicked on it, I probably shouldn't have. Oh, there we are, still English. So we're ready to click next. And you have the ability to connect your accounts. I'm turning pages as I look. And so back here. And we click next. We got this window here. That window is click skip. And you're all set. Start using Oracle Linux. So let's go back here. Click skip. We'll click on start using Oracle Linux. And there's that red screen. Sometimes it changes. Okay. And so there are common tasks here. Browse the web, connect to the online accounts, use Windows and Workspace, change the date and time, change the wallpaper, etc. It says click X. That's this X here in the upper right-hand corner. Do not click the VNC window. It doesn't show, does it? So we have to scroll over just a little bit. Click X. And you're now back to the desktop. And so up here, you see the power button, the little circle with the dash in it. And so you're getting ready to shut down Oracle Linux. We'll click any icon in the upper right-hand corner as shown. And obviously there's a power button right there. And it says power off, and we'll push power off. So power off, pops up, power off. And in a moment, this red screen will collapse. And it just did. All right, we're back to Dome 0, and host 01 is down. You have successfully completed the install. Congratulations. We'll see you back here for the next practice soon.